Now, this next final section of today's reading, we are going to be discussing the native. And this is finally this bit, we're going to be discussing the native of a person born with an emphasis of Krittika, with the moon in Krittika, and as well, I think that we're also going to read some interpretations of just general planets in the nakshatra of Krittika. Now, what we're going to read is coming from a author who is a sidereal Rashi practitioner, which means this is the part where we're not talking about Agni, we're talking about how to understand interpreting Krittika as a practical functional nakshatra, as a technique and tool of interpretation in personal horoscopy, which means we're getting into some details that require objectivity as to the possible bias that we could understand coming from the author. So let's just put on our hats of discernment and see whether what we read is going to relate in a way that we can understand and see the nature of the nakshatra in the person. So here we have the Krittika native. The Krittika native is full of energy, vitality, and passion. Like Agni, a devata capable of consuming continuous streams of oblations, this person has a large appetite for life. Beware, such drives and ambition greatly increase the native's chance of physical or mental burnout, as we already read from Viktakara. The shukram, which is required of this nakshatra, which produces the jyotir of radiant energy, needs to be balanced, needs to be maintained, the fuel, so you don't burn yourself out. Agni's subtle energy of tejas ignites mental fortitude and courage. So the native of Krittika, as well, also has an unquenchable thirst for knowledge and wisdom, and their tejas give ample opportunity for spiritual growth and illumination. This is not just a native, but anybody with a lot of planets in Krittika, or an emphasis of Krittika as well. Now, defensiveness is an attitude that's foreign to the Krittika person. They approach life proactively and confidently. They're fueled by an internal blazing fire, and they're drawn to new and exhilarating endeavors. Willing to assume risk, the Krittika person exhibits a pioneering and enterprising nature. Such personality traits are accompanied by a strong need for independence. Now, excuse me. The author is giving us some examples of people who are natives of Krittika Nakshatra. What we read is that Katharine Hepburn has the sun and moon in Krittika. She is a model native of Krittika Nakshatra, according to the author. Katharine Hepburn was well known for her fierce independence and headstrong attitude. Hollywood struggled with her refusal to fit the mold of the typical Hollywood starlet. According to her biography, Hepburn famously shunned the Hollywood publicity machine, and she refused to conform to society's expectations of women. She was outspoken, assertive, and athletic. She married once as a young woman, but thereafter lived independently. Cool. Now, what we read is that Agni's son, Kartikeya, is anointed Indra's army commander. So aggressive or competitive activities are similarly perfect outlets for the restless energy possessed by the Krittika person. Perhaps this person is skilled in martial arts or fencing. A sharp sword is the stellar configuration of Krittika, we have to remember. Another potential occupation suited to Krittika's assertive energy is as a member of the Army, the Navy, or the Air Force. Not surprisingly, the Krittika native is often involved in professions requiring the application of heat or fire. So depending upon the chart, this person may be a shaman, a blacksmith, a welder, a firefighter, and so on. Shaman, very cool. If other chart indications support a career in the medical field, the native could even be a surgeon or a medical specialist who uses sharp or pointed instruments, like such as scalpels, sutras, hypodermic needles, etc. Agni is the eater of food amongst the gods, and also the agent used for cooking sacrificial oblations. So now, if the second Bhava Bhavesha, which means the lord of the second house. So if the lord of the second house, which relates to food, the second house relates to food, to resources, and to being well fed and well nourished. So if the second house lord implicates Krittika somehow, whether that means the second house cusp falls into Krittika, or whether the second house lord falls into Krittika, the person may be a connoisseur of food. If the third Bhava Bhavesha, which relates to interests and hobbies, so that's the third lord of the chart. If the third lord falls into Krittika, their love of cookery may be a favorite pastime. Now, if the 10th lord of the chart, because of course the 10th house relates to profession, so if the 10th lord falls into Krittika Nakshatra, perhaps this person is a chef or an employee in the restaurant industry. Cool. Wow, very specific. Very cool. So now, when there is affliction to things related to Krittika, Krittika can be associated with serious eating disorders. This runs the gamut from binge eating to poor dietary choices. Hence, digestive issues, which is a vitiated Agni, are common. Recall that Agni indiscriminately consumes large quantities of flesh, blood, and fat when burning the Khandava forest. This same indiscretion can spill over into other areas of life, especially in light of the healthy libido possessed by the native, the Krittika person. This spells trouble in the relationship department. Just as Agni dupes the wives of the Saptarishis by converting himself into their household fire, deception and trickery can at times be a component of the Krittika native's intimate relationships. Returning to Katharine Hepburn, her intense attraction towards Spencer Tracy led to a 27-year affair, despite the fact that Tracy was married to another woman. Now, depending on the nature and placement of the planet implicated, the Krittika native may instead be the victim of such devices. Let's recall that Svaha impersonates the wives of the Saptarishis in order to have her way with Agni. Agni had such a desire, and he was blinded by his own passion, so he couldn't see through Svaha's deception. Thus, the Krittika native may be the instigator or the victim in schemes involving lust and manipulation. Just as the native's intimate relationships are plagued by unusual circumstances, so too is their familial life. Kartikeya is born from Agni's seed, yet Agni is unaware that he has a son. 7 stepmothers tend to Kartikeya's nursing. This native may incur similar experiences. Perhaps there's a question as to his real parents, the use of a surrogate parent, adoption, multiple births. Kartikeya is born with 6 heads, or the birth of an unplanned child. These are all possibilities. Now, despite the potential for desire and ambition to get the best of him, the Krittika native is capable of great accomplishments in life. Careers which reward risk-taking and independence are perfect avenues for distinguished success, as are those requiring leadership acumen and mental ingenuity. Agni is the priest of the sacrifice who administers all communications between the divine and mundane realms. Such skill, coupled with passionate expression, may give an interest in clergy, ambassadorship, or advocacy. Ambassadorship, being an ambassador for something, or someone who advocates for something on the part of other people. Now, Jesse Jackson is somebody who had the moon and the Lagnesha in Krittika. The Lagnesha is the Bhavesha of the Lagna, so it's the ruler of the ascendant. So Jesse Jackson had his moon and the ruler of his ascendant in Krittika. Mind you, this is a sidereal practitioner, so let's for now just be happy enough saying that they had the moon and some other planet in Krittika. So Jesse Jackson embodies several important Krittika traits. For example, his parenting involved unusual circumstances. Jesse Jackson's mother became pregnant as a teenager by a much older married man. Soon after Jackson's birth, she married another man who adopted Jesse as his son. Jesse Jackson desired to be a preacher early on. He attended the Chicago Theological Seminary and was later ordained as a Baptist minister. When Jesse Jackson met and went to work for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., his life changed dramatically. The experience transformed Jesse Jackson and launched his career into politics. A great leader and passionate speaker, Jackson was politically active and in 1984 ran for president. Now, lastly, a great advocate for equal rights, Jackson founded the National Rainbow Coalition, an organization that campaigns for equal rights for African Americans, women, and homosexuals. Dope. Fucking right. Good for Jesse Jackson. That's awesome. Now, Teresa says that Jesse Jackson is fire. He talks so fast that they used to have a radio show based on people calling in trying to figure out what he said. Cool. Awesome, Teresa. Good one. So that's Jesse Jackson. I don't really know him too well, and I'm glad that I heard about this about him. Now, here is something that we might not even speak to it because it's a sidereal reference. Yeah. Cool. So, finally, coupled with the pioneering and enterprising nature of this nakshatra, the moon here becomes a vehicle for great innovation and creativity in particular. And that is that, ladies and gentlemen. That has been our reading of Agni and Krittika Nakshatra, coming from the divine forces of the lunar nakshatras as portrayed in the Vedas.